We begin the Gemara on the top of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. Amar Rav from Bar Papa, Amar Rav Chiste. Kol shehu mishum evel. Any time that a person is fasting and it's related to mourning. And the Gemara brings an example, Kagain Tisha B'Av. For example, Tisha B'Av, when we're mourning the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And Va'avel, and an Avel himself, which of course is mourning. Aser, so then he's not allowed to bathe himself, bein bechamin, bein betzainin, whether it's hot water or cold water. Kol shehu mishum tainog, anytime we're fasting, and the fasting is not mourning anything, like for example what we're speaking about in this Masechta, when we're fasting because we want rain to come. And then why are you not allowed to bathe in those days when you're fasting for rainwater? Shehu mishum tainog, it's because it's a day to fast and for a person to minimize in the pleasures of his body. And one of those things is not to bathe himself. So if that's the reason why you're not bathing, going tainis sibur, all the other tainis sibur besides Tisha B'Av, so b'chamin aser, you're only not allowed to use warm water, but b'tzainin mutter. Cold water, it's allowed. So these are the two halachas that Rav Chiste said. So the Gemara here is going to discuss both of these halachas, going to bring rayas and questions on these halachas. Amar Ravidi Baravin, so Ravidi Baravin says, Afananami tanine. I can show you that in our Mishnah we have a raya to what Rav Chiste said regarding the tainis tzibur, that it's only not allowed with warm water, but with cold water it's allowed. Because what did it say in the Mishnah? V'noyelin es hamer chatzos, that on the days of the fast they lack all the bathhouses. What are bathhouses? Those are places where they warm the water to give you showers and baths, but it's not cold water. Merchitz is a person wants to take a cold shower, he doesn't need to go to a bathhouse. So it says bathhouses, so that means only the warm water. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, how's this haraya? Vi b'tzainin aser. If we would want to tell you that even with cold water it's forbidden. Should the Mishnah say that they clog up all the rivers that have the cold water? You can't put a dam and clog up the rivers, that you shouldn't have any cold water to use. So what should the Mishnah say? It's telling you the bathhouse is where a person usually goes to use for a shower, for a bath. But it could mean also cold water. Amar Rav Sheishe B'Rei Ravidi. So Rav Sheishe B'Rei Ravidi explained, Abba, my father that brought this raya, Hachi kashile. This is the question that he had in our Mishnah, and therefore he does have a good raya. Mechti, let's see. Tnan, the Mishnah says in the beginning, Asa b'rechitze. It starts off saying that you're not allowed to bathe yourself on these fast days. So it already said that you're not allowed to bathe yourself. Noyelen esamechatzais lamali. So why does it have to finish off again that you lock the bathhouses? Obviously, if no one's coming to take a bath, so you lock the bathhouses. So it's extra. Elolav, Shmami, no, the only reason the Mishnah repeats again, that Bechamin Aser, that only with warm water are you not allowed to take a bath, a shower on the days of these tainis tzibur, but B'tzainin mutter, with cold water it's allowed. So this is a raya to the second halacha that Rav Chiste said. Shall we say that we have a raya to Rav Chiste, and here the Gemara's raya that it's bringing is to the first halacha of Rav Chiste, that on a fast day that is for mourning, like Tisha B'Av, over there you're not allowed to take a shower, not a cold shower, not a hot shower. So there's a brayso that says, Kol chayavet tfilis, people that are chayiv to use the mikveh. So Rashi brings there, whether it's a niddah or yeldis and so on, someone that has a chayiv to go to the mikveh. So then tovlin kedarkan, they're allowed to go to the mikveh according to what they have to do, bein b'Tisha B'Av, bein b'Yom Kippurim, whether it's on Tisha B'Av or whether it's on Yom Kippur. That's what it says here. So now the question is, this mikveh we're speaking about, what kind of mikveh is this? B'mai. What kind of mikveh? Ileime b'chamin. Are you speaking about a mikveh with warm water? Can't be, because tefillah b'chamin mi ikke. Do you have tefillah in a warm or a hot mikveh? This is in the times of the Gemara, times of the Mishnah, when it wasn't really possible to have a tefillah in a hot mikveh. She'uvininu. If it's a hot mikveh, so what do you have to do? You have to take the water, put it into a pot, and heat up the water, and that's how you have hot water. So the mikvahs in those times is not hot mikvahs. Elolav b'tzainin. The mikveh, the tefillah it's speaking about, is cold water. And what does it say over here? V'chayave tefillas in. These individuals that are chayiv, they must use the mikveh, so they are allowed to go to the mikveh on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. In a shachrine, loy. Anybody else is not allowed to use the mikveh even though it's cold water. So what do you see from here? It says in this brayso regarding Tisha B'Av. It also says Yom Kippur, but it says Tisha B'Av, which means because Tisha B'Av is a day that we're not fasting stam because of tzara, but we're fasting as a mourning for the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Anytime you fast in connection to mourning, so you're not, according to what Rav Chisda said, you're not allowed to use not hot water and not cold water. That's what you see over here regarding the mikveh, that any person is not allowed to use a mikveh on Tisha B'Av even though it's cold water. You see over here that it puts Yom Kippur into the same category as Tisha B'Av, even though that's not something Rav Chisda spoke about. But the Mefarshim say that even though Yom Kippur is not for mourning, but nevertheless, it's minatayr and it's more stringent, and you're not allowed to use not hot water, not cold water. It goes together. So l'chayda we have a raya to the first halacha of Rav Chisda. Rav Chana bar Katina, so Rav Chana bar Katina says, no, not necessarily. I'll give you an example where you have a hot mikveh, even in those times, and the water is not going to be drawn water. It's not ma'im shuvin. Maybe this Brais is speaking about the springs, hot springs that they have in Tverya, or anything similar to the Chamei Tverya. So it became hot without drawing the water into a vessel. If what all this Brais is speaking about is going to the mikveh in hot water, but in cold water, everybody would agree that you can go to the mikveh. Anybody could, not only someone that's chayiv. Anybody can go to the mikveh in cold water. Same as seifa. What does it say in the seifa of that Brais? Rab Chanina Kayanim says, Kedai hu beis Elokeinu, that it's befitting for the Beis HaMikdash la'abed olav tvila pa'machas b'shana, that you should lose that day, that you should not be allowed to go to the mikveh once a year. So Rab Chanina Kayanim is arguing. He's saying that on Tisha B'Av you can't go to the mikveh, even if you're a person that's obligated to use the mikveh, but because it's a day that we're mourning for the Churban Beis HaMikdash, so you shouldn't use the mikveh at least one day a year. Now, if you're saying that the whole argument here in this Braisa is speaking specifically about hot springs, but a cold mikveh, everybody agrees that on Tisha B'Av you can use a cold mikveh, so then Yirchatz B'Sainin, let him go to the mikveh in a cold mikveh. Why is Rab Chanina Kayanim saying that once a year you lose a day of going to the mikveh, you delay the mikveh to the next day? But everybody agrees that you can go to a cold mikveh. So he should say, maybe one day a year, don't use a hot mikveh. That's not what he says. He says one day a year, you don't go to the mikveh at all. So it seems like they're arguing whether you could b'chlal use the mikveh, even cold water. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa answers, we would be able to explain what Rab Chanina Kayanim is saying if it's a place that there's only hot springs and you don't have cold water. There's no rivers there's no lakes, there is no cold water for a person to use for a mikveh. So they're only arguing about warm water. And nevertheless, he's saying, even if you won't find any other cold water to go to, nevertheless, Tisha B'Av is a day that it's worthy to give up a day of mikveh and delay the mikveh to the next day. So we don't have a clear raya from this Braisa to what Rav Chisda said, that on Tisha B'Av you don't use even cold water for a shower or so on. So Toshema, that is, Toshema, another raya, Kisha Omru. So now, this is speaking about the tiniest that we spoke about over here, tiniest tzibur for a time when there's a tzara, for a time when you need rain. So Kisha Amru Asa b'malacha, when they said that you're not allowed to work on such a kind of a fast, that means that you can't work from the morning. By night, you're allowed to work. And when they said that you're not allowed to wear shoes on the day of such a fast, so that's only when you're in the city. So there, you don't wear any shoes. If you're traveling on such a day, even though it's a tiny sibra, you're not supposed to wear shoes, but traveling, you're allowed to wear your shoes. Mutter. Ha-keitzad. So what does this mean? When you go out into the way, so you're traveling, noyel, you put on shoes. Nichnas le'ir, you come back into the city, chaylitz, you have to take off your shoes. And the third thing, when they said that you're not allowed to bathe yourself, you're not allowed to bathe your entire body. Avol yadav, v'raglov, your face, your hands, and your feet, mutter. Person is allowed to wash his face, hands, and feet, even on these fast days. That's benegeh to the fast days. And then, the Braisa says, and the same halacha will apply regarding a person that's a menuda, a person that was excommunicated, a person that's in a chayrim. So all these halachas apply to him as well. And also regarding a novel. Regarding a novel as well, that he's not allowed to work, he's not allowed to wear shoes, he's not allowed to bathe himself. So all these halachas apply to him as well, that when we say he's not allowed to work, it's only by day, not by night, and all the details that we said over here. So the Gemara says, my love, don't you think, when it said over here that all these details apply to an oval as well, akulu. It's going on the three details that were mentioned in this braisa, that the same halachas of a tiny sibur applies also to an oval. We're comparing the two. So now if so, there's going to be a question on what Rav Chisda said. So first the Gemara explains, what are we speaking about over here? When it speaks about the part of the braisa that speaks about not bathing, is it speaking about cold water or hot water? So let's see. If you're going to say that this braisa is speaking specifically about hot water, Panav Yada Veraglov Misharum, is a person allowed to bathe himself with hot water, or wash himself with his face, his hands and feet with hot water? An oval, that is. Is an oval allowed to wash himself with hot water? Panav Yada Veraglov. V'amar Rav Sheishes, but Rav Sheishes said, oval aser lohoishit etzboi bechamin. Oval is not even allowed to put a finger into hot water. So you see that even a finger not. So for sure, if he's not allowed to put a finger into hot water, he's not allowed to wash his face, his hands and feet in hot water. So when it says in this braisa that we're speaking also about an oval, and it says that he's allowed to wash his face, hands and feet, so we can't be speaking about hot water. Elolav b'tzainin. What are we speaking about? We're speaking about cold water. So what do we see over here? That even when it's speaking about cold water, what is it saying? That you're not allowed to bathe yourself in cold water. Even for a fast, which is not for morning, but mistam, these tiniest tzibur, you're not allowed to bathe yourself in cold water. This is not like Rav Chisda said, that it's only in warm water that you're not allowed. So the Gemara answers, Loi, no, that's not the pshat in this braisa. Lo'olam b'chamin. Really, the braisa is speaking about warm water, hot water, because we're speaking about the fasts for rain and so on. So over then, it's only warm water that you're not allowed. Your question is, it's comparing a person that's excommunicated or a person that's an oval, and over there, by them, for sure, it's speaking about cold water. It's not speaking about hot water. Ashara. So the Gemara says, when it mentions menuda and an oval, ashara koi. It's going on the other two things mentioned in the braisa. It's only going on the malacha and on the fact that you're not allowed to wear shoes. And it's telling you when you're not allowed to do malacha and when you're not allowed to wear the shoes. Regarding that, it compares an oval. But regarding bathing yourself, you can't compare an oval and a tiny sibur. Like Rav Chisda says, by an oval, even cold water you're not allowed, and by a tiny sibur, that's just to minimize your tainug, it's only warm water. So you don't have a clear raya from this braisa either against Rav Chisda. Toshema, a third raya, and this has been negated to an oval. Maise, there was a story, there were Meisu, Bonov, Shel Rab Yosi, Ben Rab Chanina. The children of Rab Yosi, the son of Rab Chanina, passed away. And Verachatz B'tzainim Kol Shiva, and he washed himself, he bathed himself for all 7 days of Avelos in cold water. So you see, not like Rav Chisda said. Rav Chisda said an oval is not allowed to bathe even in cold water. And it says the Gemara, Hasam Kishetachfu Avelov. There, it's not one child that passed away, but he had more than one child that passed away. So when you have an Avelos, one after the next, so then you're going to be allowed to bathe yourself in cold water. What's the basis of this? The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Tachfu Avelov Ze'achazeh. If a person has an Avelos of mourning, one after the next, so then Hichbit Sarai, if his hair becomes too heavy, he has too long hair, Mekel Betar. You're allowed to lighten your hair with a razor. So similar, just like it says over there regarding the hair of a person, that you're allowed to take off the hair if it's too much hair. So similar also with taking a bath, that the person is allowed to take a bath in cold water, like in that situation where he never had one child, another child had passed away. And also it says there, Mechabes Ksuse B'mayim. You're allowed to wash your clothing in water because it's the Avelis that lasts for so long. So same thing over here. Now the Gemara adds, Omer Rav Chisda, regarding this that it says here, regarding the hair, that you can cut your hair betar. That's only with a razor, which is not usually the way you cut your hair. Avaloi b'misparayim, not with scissors. And b'mayim, when it says you can wash your clothing, it says water. But v'loi b'neser, not with neser, which is some kind of a cleaning agent. V'loi b'chayel, or not with sand, some kind of sand that they were able to use then also as a cleaning agent. Okay, so therefore, that braisa over there where it says that he washed, that he bathed in cold water is not a raya, because over there he had avelos that came one after the other. Now the Gemara brings another opinion. Rava says, Oval mutalirchis b'tzainim. Oval is allowed to bathe in cold water, kol shiva, all 7 days. Why is this? So Rav is arguing with Rav Chisda, and Rav says, Midi dahave abisra v'chamra. And the reason is because we compare bathing in cold water to eating meat and drinking wine. Oval is allowed to eat meat and drink wine, so which it gives a person pleasure at least similar to bathing in cold water, and that's allowed. So therefore, Rav says oval is allowed to bathe in cold water. So the Gemara will go through these brises again. First, it brings another brise here as a question on what Rav said. Meisvei, so they asked a question on him. So the brise says as follows: Ein a boigeres rashol lenavel es atzma. A boigeres, which is a girl that's already more mature. This is when she's 12 and a half a year after her bas mitzvah. So she's not allowed to be menavel herself. She's not allowed to allow herself to become disgusting. Bimei evel avia, in the times when she's mourning for her father. She actually has two pshatim. One pshat is that she's mourning for her father that passed away. Another pshat is that if her father is an oval, so she's not allowed to join him in his avelus and be disgusting. Why not? So the reason is because a begeres is someone that's of age already, that she's a kalamadel. She has to be prepared to go and to get married to someone. So therefore she's not allowed to have the regular halachas of avelus. She has to adorn herself properly and wash and clean herself properly. That's the brayse. So now what do we understand from this? Ha naida. But if it would be speaking about a naida that's just bas mitzvah and she's not yet ready for getting married, Rasha, so she is allowed to leave herself, to be menavel herself, to be disgusting, in other words, to apply to herself the regular halachas of avelus. So now what are we speaking about? This nivel, this lashon of nivel, then we say that a naira is allowed to conduct herself in the halachas of an oval. What are we speaking about? My love, don't you think that the subject of this braisa is berichitza? It's speaking about whether a girl is allowed to wash herself, bathe herself or not. Now, ubamai, when the Braisa speaks about this and it says that a girl that's more mature has to wash herself because she has to get married. So what are we speaking about? Washing yourselves with what? Is it speaking about washing yourself with hot water? So, Eina Begeres Rasha, are you going to say that a Begeres is not allowed to keep the halachas of Avelis and she could wash herself with hot water? How could you say such a thing? V'amar Rav Chisda, as we mentioned before, Rav Chisda said, Aval asa lo hishudetz boy b'chamen. That an Aval is not even allowed to put his finger into hot water. So even if we're going to say that for a girl that has to wash herself properly, that she's allowed to, but it's even in hot water, that can't be. Elolav b'tzainin. So what is this Braisa speaking about? It's saying that this Begeres, a mature girl, is allowed to bathe herself in cold water. So what do we see from this Braisa? Only this Begeres, because she's a Kala girl, she has to be able to get married, so she's allowed to wash in cold water. But when it comes to anybody else, comes to a Naida, or anybody else that doesn't have that issue, you're not allowed to bathe, that is, even in cold water. So this is a question on Rava that said that an oval is allowed to bathe themselves in cold water. Just before I say the answer of the Gemara, one thing to point out that Rashi says over here, that this Braisa and the Gemara is discussing a begeres, a mature girl that has to get married, or a naida, which is bas mitzvah, but she's not yet of age to get married. But a ketana is not mentioned here. A girl that's under bas mitzvah is not mentioned, and from this Gemara, many pais can bring a raya that when it comes to the concept of avelos, there is no union of chinuch. There's no union to be children that nebuch have a situation there where father passes away or something, there's no union of chinuch, of avelis for children. That's what it's mashma in this Gemara. Otherwise, why is the Gemara saying dafka naida? Could have said any girl, a ketana as well. It's machlokes about it, but many poskim say that there's no avelis for a ketana. So the Gemara answers, no, this braisa is b'chlal not a raya against Rava, loy akichul upirkus. This braisa is not speaking about bathing b'chlal. It's speaking about kichul, which is the makeup, and pirchus, the hair, preparing the hair of the girl for braiding the hair. That's what it's speaking about. Chlal not speaking about bathing. Shall we say we have a raya to what Rav said, that an oval is allowed to take a cold shower? The sons of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina passed away, so it clearly says that he took a bath for 7 days. So and cold water. So we see exactly like Rav said. So the Gemara says, Omri, like we answered before, Hasam b'shech tachfu avel of zeh chazeh. That case was an exception because he had his children that passed away one after the other. And we learned in the Braisa, the Tanya tachfu avel of zeh chazeh, when a person has an avelus that comes one after the next, hichbit saroi, and he has a lot of hair that's heavy, mekel betar, he can lighten the hair with a razor, and he could wash his clothing in water. So that's a different situation. And the Gemara brings again the same thing that it brought before. He could only lighten his hair with a razor, but not to take a regular haircut with the regular scissors. He could wash his clothing in water, but which is a cleaning agent, not in sand, and oil, which is another kind of cleaning agent. It's not another kind of herb that you use for cleaning. Now there's another opinion of what Rava said, which is actually like Rav Chisda. Rava said like Rav Chisda, oval asur b'tzainin, an oval is not allowed to bathe himself even in cold water, kol shiva, all 7 days of avelus. So now the Gemara explains, my shna mi basar v'yayin. Before we said, Rava said you're allowed to bathe yourself in cold water because we compare it to the fact that an oval is allowed to eat meat and drink wine. But now we're saying he's not allowed. So why is it different than eating meat and drinking wine? So the Gemara says, Hasab lefakuchi pachtehu da'avid. The fact that an oval is allowed to eat meat and drink wine is not because those things are bringing pleasure. It's because it's in order to minimize the pacha, the anxiety, the fact that an oval is so upset about what happened, so we allow him to eat meat and drink wine. In other words, the meat and the wine that he's drinking is not bringing him any pleasure. It's just taking away the pacha, the anxiety of his situation. So therefore that's allowed. But when it comes to bathing, since there's a certain element of pleasure in that, even with cold water, that's not allowed. So now the Gemara brings again the same Braisa, goes through the same thing. So shall we say that we have a raya to Rava's opinion and Rav Chisda's opinion as well regarding the fact that an oval is not allowed to bathe in cold water because the Braisa said, a begeres, a mature girl, is not allowed to keep herself disgusting because she has to get married. But if it's a girl that's younger than that, she's allowed to keep the avelus. Regarding what aspect of avelus are we speaking about? Are we speaking about bathing in warm water? A begeres does not keep avelus regarding warm water. An oval is not allowed to put even a finger into warm water. So for sure we're not allowing a begeres to bathe in warm water. Rather, what we're speaking about, cold water. And we see over here that you're not allowed to bathe even in cold water. Only if you're a kala girl, then you can bathe in cold water. So this is a raya to what Rav and Rav Chisda said. So again the Gemara says, Loi akichol upirkis. That is speaking about makeup and braiding the hair, but it's not speaking about bathing in water at all. Amar Rav Chisda. Now Rav Chisda says, based on this last point over here, that this Braisa is saying that a woman, a girl, is not allowed to use any makeup or prepare her hair nicely. So I say meres, this also teaches us that oval asa betachbaises kol shiva. That an oval is not allowed tachbaises kol shiva, which means that she's not allowed to wash her clothing all 7 days. Right? The Hilchase, now what's the final halacha after this entire discussion over here? Oval asa lirchetz kol gufay bein b'chamen bein b'tzainin. Now oval should not take a shower, not in warm water and not in cold water for 7 days. And avopanav yodav v'raglov. However, just to wash the hands, the face, the feet, for b'chamen asa, in warm water it's not allowed. B'tzainin mutter, in cold water it is allowed. Avolasuch, but to anoint yourself with anything, afila kol shuhu, even just a tiny drop, osir. That's not allowed. Ve'in la'averes hazuama, if you're using anything and the purpose is to remove dirt, you're anointing yourself with things that you had just to remove dirt, so that mutter, that is allowed. So this last point, la'averes hazuama, is brought in Paiskim, so from here there's a heter, even to take a shower and things like that, if it's just for the purpose to remove dirt, but not for any pleasure whatsoever, so then that is allowed. Okay, this is the conclusion of this part of the Gemara, this sugya about bathing, whether it's for a fast day or whether it's for an oval. Now the Gemara goes back to the inyan of fasting. So what's one of the things that's unique regarding fasting? You add a bracha in Shmay Nesre, the bracha of Anenu. Sagt the Gemara, Tzloise de Tanise. This extra bracha that you say on a fast day, heichi matkerinan. Where is it mentioned in Shmoneh Esrei? So Ad Berei Rav Yehuda le Rav Yitzchak Berei. Rav Yehuda took his son Rav Yitzchak and he took him like for a walk, and V'darash and he darshan. He explained to him, Yachid shekibul olav tainis, an individual that accepts upon himself a day to fast. It's not a tainis tzibur, it's a fast that he accepts upon himself. Mispalel shel tainis, he says an extra bracha for the tainis, the bracha of Aneinu, and v'heicha noimra. Where does he say that bracha? Ben goyel l'roifa. You put it in Shmoneh Esrei as an extra bracha between the bracha of goyel Yisrael and the bracha of roifa of Rafeinu. Ask if Rav Yitzchak. So Rav Yitzchak asked a question on this. V'chi yachid kaveya bracha la'atzmai. A fast that an individual accepts upon himself is so. An individual is so important that we are mesaken for him that he can add a separate bracha in the Shmoneh Esrei just because he took upon himself a fast for himself. So this is the question of Yitzchak asked. I mean, another Gerus in the Gemara is actually Omer Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asked this question. Omer Rav Yitzchak. So therefore, Rav Yitzchak said differently than what his father told him. Basically, so he said, "No, b'shemei tefillah." The place where you say Aneinu is not a separate bracha. You include it in middle of the bracha of Shemei tefillah. Chayin Omer Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes said this as well. B'shemei tefillah, the place you put that bracha of Aneinu is in the bracha of Shemei tefillah. Meisvei, the question was asked. It says, Ein ben yachid letzibur. There's no difference between a person that's fasting as a yachid to a tzibur that's fasting. Ella, the only difference is shezeh mispalel Shmoneh Esrei. When you're davening as a yachid, so your Shmoneh Esrei has 18 brachas, and v'zeh mispalel teish esrei. And when there's a tzibur that's fasting, you add a bracha, and therefore it's going to be 19 brachas. Rashi points out that this number of brachas, 18 and 19, today it's really 19 and 20, because we have the bracha of Olam al Shinim, so there's another bracha. But the point here is that it says that only by a tzibur you add an extra bracha. Now, before the Gemara explains the question, it will first explain when it says yachid and tzibur, what are we really talking about? My yachid umay tzibur. What does it mean when it says the tainus of a yachid and the tainus of a tzibur? If you're going to say the pshat here is a yachid means the person when he davens Shmoneh Esrei for himself, and a tzibur means shliach tzibur. Tzibur refers to the shliach tzibur. When the shliach tzibur does chazaras hashatz for everyone, that's what tzibur means. So how could you say this? Hani teisha esrei, a shliach tzibur on a day of a fast day. That's a fast for the tzibur. He only adds one bracha, the bracha of Aneinu, to make it 19 brachas or 20 brachas. Esrin va'arba havu. It's really 24 brachas. As Rashi brings, we're going to learn in the next Perek, in the beginning of the next Perek, it speaks about that they added another 5 brachas, or another 6 brachas, which makes it into 24 brachas. So they really, on a fast day, there are many more brachas that you add. So how could you say that for the tzibur, there's only another 1 bracha that you add? So it can't be speaking about the fast that the shliach tzibur is saying 19 brachas. Elolav, so rather the pshat in this brayse is as follows. Hachi ka'omar, this is how you have to understand the brayse. Ein ben yachid. The kibul olav, tainus yachid. There's no distinction between an individual that accepts upon himself a lower level of a fast, just a fast of him himself, a tainus on the level of a yachid. L'yachid, to an individual, shekibul olav, tainus tzibur. To a yachid that accepted upon himself a tainus like the tainus of a tzibur, that he's fasting like the tzibur fasts. So we're talking only about a yachid here. But when a yachid accepts upon himself a fast, he can accept upon himself to fast like a yachid, or he could accept upon himself to fast like a tzibur. So the difference is, el shezeh mispal Shmoneh Esrei. The yachid davens Shmoneh Esrei does not add the brach in Shmoneh Esrei, and v'zeh mispal teisha esrei. And the yachid that accepts upon himself a fast like a tzibur adds another bracha in Shmoneh Esrei. He says the bracha of Aneinu separately. So what do you see from this? Shema mino. So if so, from this brayse it's clear yachid kaiveya bracha la'atzmai, that even for a yachid, when he accepts upon himself to fast like a tzibur, a yachid is important enough that we allow him, that he establishes a separate bracha for himself. So you see that there is a separate bracha for a yachid, a 19th bracha that he says for himself. So what Rav Yehuda said, that you add an extra bracha, is true. So the Gemara answers, no, that's not the pshat in this brayse. When this Braisa was making a distinction between a Yachid and a Tzibur, it is speaking about a Shliach Tzibur. It's not speaking about a Yachid that accepts upon himself to fast like a Tzibur. No, it's speaking about a Shliach Tzibur. You had a question. Shliach Tzibur Esren v'arba matzli, that a Shliach Tzibur davens 24 tefillas, so it's 24 brachas, that is, in Shemoneh Esrei. So how could you say that there's only 19 brachas? So the Gemara answers, Begimel tiniest rishonis, what it's speaking about is the first 3 fasts, the leke esren v'arba. The first 3 fasts that the Tzibur fasts, there is no 24 brachas that you say in Shemoneh Esrei. As we learned before in the Mishnahs, there's the first fast that the Tzibur fasts, the 3 fasts, Monday, Thursday, Monday, and then that's on, when was that? That's on the Chodesh Kislev, right, if I remember correctly. And then there's afterwards another time they fast 3 times, and then they fast again, another 7 fasts. So there were 3 different times that they fasted. So over here, we're speaking about the first 3 fasts, and over there, you don't add 20, there's no 24 brachas in the Shemoneh Esrei. There's only 19 brachas, only Anenu. The first time that Tzibur fasts, you don't add extra brachas. It says in the Mishnah as follows: Ein bein ketani. It says in the Mishnah that there's no distinction between the first fasts that the Tzibur fasts and the next set of fasts that they fast, because it says Ein bein gimel rishonis legimel emtzayis. There's no difference between the first 3 fasts to the middle 3 fasts. Ella, the only difference is shebe'elu mutarim basiyas malacha. The first 3 fasts, you're still allowed to work. Ube'elu asurim basiyas malacha. And in the other 3 fasts, you're not allowed to do any work. That's the only difference. That's what it says in the Mishnah. So if so, it seems when it comes to the brachas that are added in Shemoneh Esrei, the 24 brachas, they're both equal. They both say 24 brachas in Shemoneh Esrei. So you can't tell me that in the first 3 fasts they don't add any brachas. They don't add these 24 brachas. So the Gemara says Tana v'shayir. When the Mishnah there says that there's no difference, and the only difference is work, the Mishnah is leaving out. Tana, it says the difference of work, but it's leaving out other things. It's leaving out this difference as well, that really in the first fast you don't say 24 brachas. So the Gemara asks, my shiur, the high shiur. What else did it leave out together with this that it left out? This is something the Gemara always says. If the Tana of a Braisa is leaving something out, one thing is not, the Tana would not leave one thing out. If he's leaving out more than one thing, so then it's possible to say that the Tana left something out. But just one thing the Tana wouldn't leave out. So what else did the Tana leave out? That's one question. Visu, another question, how can you say that the Tana left something out in the distinction between the first fast and the other fasts? V'ha ein bein ketani. It says ein bein. Ein bein means there is no distinction. So therefore, it's mashma that in the first fast, you also have to say 24 brachas of Shemoneh Esrei. Ella, so the Gemara gives a different answer. 2 answers. Tana bi'isure kamairi. The Tana of this Braisa is only speaking about those things that are forbidden to be done on the day of a fast, like not eating, not working. B'tfilas loy mairi. He's not speaking about the brachas that you say in Shemoneh Esrei. So the fact that this is not mentioned here as a distinction, that doesn't prove anything, because the Tana is not speaking about that. Or if you want, I can tell you be'emtza isa nami loy matzli chav dalet, that not only in the first set of fasts do you not say 24 brachas, even in the second set of fasts, which is the middle set of fasts, you also don't say 24 brachas. So therefore, the Tana of this Braisa does not bring up this distinction, because you don't say 24 brachas not by the first set of fasts and not by the second set of fasts.